We're excited. Welcome, Erika. We're glad you're here today. Iowa, the Iowa DNR has been fortunate to have Erika Billerbeck as a conservation officer for 20 years. We appreciate you joining us today, Erika. Today we're going to learn more from Erika. She recently wrote a book, and the book is called Wildland Sentinel, Centennial, the field notes from an Iowa conservation officer. So Erika also is a previous author of the Warden's Diary column from Iowa Outdoor Magazine. She lives in Solon, Iowa, and Erika is originally from New Hampton, Iowa. She attended Luther College in Decorah, Iowa. So Erika is a wife, a mother, and a conservation officer for 20 years, like I said. Welcome, Erika. In this book, you take us to all kinds of wild places. Can you tell us, Erika, what was your inspiration in writing this book?
Well, it started out, like you said, I wrote for the Iowa Outdoors magazine for about 10 years, the Warden's Diary column in that. And that really became one of my, I guess one of the most satisfying parts of my job was doing the writing for that portion of the magazine. And after about 10 years, excuse me, the magazine underwent some changes. And at that point, I just decided to try to write a book. I'd been wanting to write a book for a long time and just decided that was a good point to try to do so.
That's awesome. I've been inspired by sections of the book. There's certain readings of the book that really tell us more about a conservation officer. There's some people have maybe preconceived notions of what a conservation officer is and does. Do you have an excerpt from the book that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so a couple things. Usually I think of a conservation officer as kind of, there's kind of two parts to our job. One of those is natural resources law enforcement, so any kind of fish and game law enforcement. And the other is more geared towards public safety. And it just kind of depends on the time of the year that that we're in as far as which one of those two avenues I'm going down. So I'll just read this. There's like two paragraphs here where I quote Jordan Fisher Smith in one of his books. So I'll read what this is, and it kind of gives you an idea of what a conservation officer does. Conservation officers are tasked with protecting the state's natural resources, mainly by way of law enforcement. In Iowa, conservation officers are state peace officers, which means we can enforce any of the laws of the state. Our primary focus is on those laws that could impact the state's wildlife, land, and waters. But although we work for the land, we spend much of our time dealing with people and their problems. In Nature Noir, his memoir of 14 years he spent working in a pair of river canyons slated to be inundated by a dam, law enforcement park ranger Jordan Fisher Smith summarized a conservation officer's duties like this. You protect the land from the people from the land, the people from each other, and the people from themselves. It's what you are trained to do without even thinking, a reflexive and unconditional act. If you're lucky, you get assigned to people who seem worth saving and land and waters whose situation is not hopeless. If not, you save them anyway, and maybe in time, saving them will make them worth it. So when I read that, I just thought that was just summarized perfectly kind of what we're doing every day when we're out working. I think of that more as kind of the public safety aspect of it. And then I'll read one other section that deals more with natural resources and fish and game law enforcement. So I'll start here. Conservation officers are the sworn guardians of Iowa wildlife, no matter their size and no matter their classification as non-game or game species. And all too often I find myself waiting among their remains, hoping to solve the mysteries of their deaths. No crime scene tape ropes off the perimeter of my crime scenes. No rubbernecking crowds gather around victim chalk outlines. No crime scene technicians swoop in to mark evidence while detectives puzzle over clues. No mourning family members or eager newspaper reporters solemnly look on. and almost always, no eyewitnesses step forward to help identify the perpetrators. My victims are found lying headless in plowed bean fields. They are lumps in the distance, an irregularity on the smooth landscape. They were left to suck in one last lungful of winter air and to exhale it back out again in a final frosted cloud. Sometimes all that's left is a pile of feathers or white bones stark against the brome grass. Others wash up on riverbanks or lake shores, half decomposed. Dogs drag my victims' limbs home, scattering their parts behind barns. Vultures hover inland, picking at their entrails. In my mind's eye, I watch as my victims are stuffed into coolers, dumpsters, and freezers. I watch as they are drugged through the leaf litter before being loaded onto a truck and driven away, their blood leaking through the crack in the tailgate. I find them adorning living room walls and on social media pages, macabre displays in the digital trophy room. Season after season, I'm called to fields, parks, yards, and woodlands to inspect the carcasses of mysteriously dead animals. I follow the putrid odor and try not to breathe as I roll bloated dead deer over from side to side, searching for bullet holes, broadhead cuts, and broken bones. I sift through the remains of geese left to rot in roadside ditches, looking for evidence to identify the person responsible for the waste. I canvass neighborhoods, check social media for chatter, and ask around, but my efforts are almost always futile. My cases usually run cold before they were ever warm, and my victims are quickly forgotten. It may take days, months, or even years to gather enough information for the pieces of a poaching case to twist and turn into the perfect alignment required by picky prosecutors. Only in moments of sheer luck, when the stars quickly align, does a case crack before my very eyes. So that's the other section that kind of geared more towards the hunting and fishing enforcement.
Absolutely. So I see quite a few more folks have joined. If there's questions while Erika's speaking, please go ahead and add them to the comments of the video, and I'll help answer those questions with Erika. So Erika, thanks for that reading. That is so moving to hear what you have to see. I know that you and your colleagues that patrol gravel roads, wildlife areas, and waterways, your tangled investigations that you have to pursue are extremely difficult. And on top of that, you've got your day-to-day job reporting to national disasters, hauling drunks to jail, encountering memorable characters along the way, and all maintaining a sense of hope, like you indicated. Hope of Iowa's remaining wild places and the people who use them. In your book, you reference to the, I guess the what the hell? What am I seeing? That I think we all have done that from time to time, whether we're driving, we're at home, or whether we see something that we're shocked by. Can you share a little bit about the what the hell?
Yeah. That's something I say to myself 100 times a day in the truck when I'm driving around and seeing stuff happening in our wildlife areas or wherever. You know, I'm sure a lot of people say that, but something that's common for me to say, and I write in the book about what I call the what the hell game, where basically this involves, the game kind of involves driving around through a wildlife area, and a lot of times what we're trained to do during our field training portion of when we're first hired, we go through field training. And one of the things that the field training officers teach us is how to try to figure out what people are doing, even though the people may not be present there where you're at. So driving through a wildlife area, typically I'm encountering a lot of parked cars or parked trucks. I'm trying to figure out where these people are at, what it is they're doing, and if I need to be concerned about what they're doing. So basically, it involves the conservation officer walking up to the vehicle that's parked there, peeking through the windows and trying to determine what it is these people are doing based on what's in the car. And sometimes that's easy to do. I mean, if there's an empty gun case and it's, you know, deer opener, and I can see a box of slugs, then I know that that person's likely deer hunting. But there are lots of times I will look at a car and have no idea, you know, based on what I'm seeing in the car, what these people are doing. So that's when I ask myself, what the hell? are these people doing? And if I can determine before I leave the wildlife area that what I guessed was correct, then I win the game. But if I can't, then, which is often the case that I can't, I just drive on to the next car, I guess. But so I have a whole chapter in the book about this game and what questions I'm asking myself as I'm driving along or as I'm walking up and looking in the car, and some of the things I've encountered in cars that I'm trying to figure out what the people are doing. So I don't know, should I read a section of that?
Yeah, let's read a section of that.
Let's see. I'll just read part of the first section here. I call it the what the hell game. It typically commences as I drive down the gravel roads of the Hawkeye Wildlife Area, see a parked car, and think, what the hell are they doing here? If based on the limited clues I can find in or around the vehicle I can prove myself to be correct, I win the game. Upon seeing a vehicle at the wildlife area, I begin by asking myself, is the vehicle occupied? If so, by how many? How much mud coats the exterior of the vehicle? Is the license plate visible? If so, to whom does the vehicle belong? Is any hunting or fishing equipment visible? Are the occupants wearing camouflage or blaze orange clothing? When I snoop around an occupied vehicle, a quick license plate check while approaching should tell me the owner's age, if he's valid to drive, or if he has a warrant. If time allows, a cross-check with the DNR computerized licensing system may be valuable as well, letting me know whether the owner has a hunting license before I even approach. One day, Jace Travers, who's another character in the book, another officer, drove by a parking lot on his way to do some trail work. In passing, he noticed a lone man sitting in the driver's seat of a parked car. In the spirit of the what the hell game, Travers briefly wondered what the man was doing there. When he returned a few hours later, he saw the same car still parked in the same place with the same occupant still seated behind the wheel. Jace stopped and approached the car with a sense of dread. The occupant was dead, with a .22 caliber size hole in his temple. So obviously that's not what you want to find when you're playing the what the hell game. There are lots of other strange things that I've encountered. The most intriguing games of the what the hell game are those I never solve. One was an unoccupied car seen at 2:30 in the afternoon that contained only a steaming piece of pizza, one bite missing, sitting on the dashboard, a box of cookies in the back seat, a woman's purse on the passenger side floor, and a pair of men's sandals on the driver's seat. Another was a blue Honda Civic with a "My Labrador is smarter than your honor student" bumper sticker pasted on the rear window. It was parked at the end of a dead-end road near a muddy boat ramp. A traffic ticket was crammed into the cup holder, and an old-fashioned metronome strangely ticked away on the dashboard. A rear-facing car seat was strapped into the back, a small plastic pet carrier was next to the car seat, and a beat-up copy of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice was open on the passenger seat. After years of peeping into hundreds of cars and concocting life stories based on random items I've seen inside them, my curiosity about people and their life circumstances has only grown. What draws some people to wild places? And why do they bring metronomes and abandon perfectly good pizza? Why did the person driving a small SUV completely filled with empty white paint cans suddenly feel the need to visit the wildlife area? And where is the person who wore the leather pants lying across the front seat of the Ford Explorer? There seems to be no end to the possibilities.
Wow, the visualizations you create with those readings are great. You don't imagine the death that you encounter. You spoke earlier to the death of animals and then the death of humans during your investigations that you encounter as a conservation officer. Your 20 years as a conservation officer with the DNR help go into these memoirs, as well as when you wrote for the Iowan, the magazine, as well as the what the hell and what you're finding with your colleagues. You as a woman officer have also some challenges that you've encountered, and not always have the encounters that you've found been negative. So a little interview that you had conducted with the city of Iowa City last week helped share with us the transition of state employees or other employees that you used to work with, and how they were leaving and you were coming on, and you were knowledge sharing. They were sharing knowledge with you as you were coming on board. Can you share a little bit what that transition was like for you as a woman coming into sometimes what we see as kind of a male dominated environment?
It's definitely a male dominated field. Conservation law enforcement in general, nationwide, is very much male dominated. So when I first came on, I write about in the book attending one of our statewide meetings, which is where all the officers in the state gather, and we have training and other speakers and meetings and stuff like that. And during that meeting, the chief of the law enforcement bureau spoke at the front of the room, and he was talking about how it's really necessary for a conservation officer to be able to roll the cob. And that's something that we're told a lot, is we need to be able to roll the cob with people. And at first I had no idea what he was even talking about, like, what is rolling the cob? But eventually I figured out that what rolling the cob means is being able to just basically make small talk with people, be able to talk with farmers who are out, working their fields, be able to talk with hunters, be able to talk with fishermen, and be able to kind of gather information that way. Rolling the cob is like you're standing there long enough with a corn cob underneath your foot, rolling it back and forth for the kernels to roll off. I
had never heard that.
Yeah, I hadn't either. But that's one thing that when he first started talking about that, I thought, I'm pretty introverted. I'm not great at small talk. And I thought, how in the world am I going to be successful at this job when I have no ability really whatsoever to be able to sit out there and roll the cob with somebody that I don't know. So at that point, I decided that there was other ways I needed to be able to compensate for my lack of ability to, just chit chat with people. And I've gotten better at it, and I can fake it sometimes, but still there's other ways that maybe not only just women, but, other just different personality types are able to do this job, knowing that there's not just one way to do the job. There's more than one way to do it. And, a male conservation officer can often fit in better with, let's say you're going to go work plain clothes somewhere. You're going to go out in a field and pretend that you're hunting so that you can catch somebody else doing something illegal in the field. A male conservation officer is more likely to be able to kind of blend in with the environment because there's not as many female hunters as there are male hunters. Also, I look pretty distinctive, so people recognize me and know who I am, so I can't just go blend in and, hunt right alongside somebody, especially in my territory, without them knowing who I am. So there was just other ways I had to think of to try to get information from people without having to rely on this rolling the cob idea.
That's great. That's great. Thanks, Erika.